All right, let's get started. People are coming, but let's start and they can join us. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Global Primatology Conference hosted by Central Washington University. My name is Nuru, and I will moderate in the session today. The session is with Dr. Marnie Lafleur and will last until 11:30. But before we start, I want you to know that the session will be recorded, and if you don't want to be recorded, you may please turn off your camera. And to make this session a fun learning experience, I would love to say some few session rules. One person can speak at a time, and we all will respect the identity of the others, including pronouns, nationality, ethnic group, and etc. And don't feel discouraged. You are welcome to ask your question, but for the others can speak, please ask just one question. Speak for yourself. No name calling or derogatory comments or question or any kinds. And failure to comply will result in the termination from the session. And keep our chat clean. The chat is for question purpose only, but I would love to encourage you to ask your question at the end of the presentation, as Dr. Manny Lafleur would love to. So it's time to introduce our speaker, Dr. Marni Lafleur. She's an assistant professor from the University of Santiago, and she also is a founder and director of Lemur Love. Lemur Love is an US-based association conducting research and conservation in Madagascar. Dr. Lafleur has been studying lemurs in the wild since 2005. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Manny Lafleur.
Thank you so much, Nuru. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to have you introduce me. And I just want to say first to the students at Central Washington University how impressed I am with you're pulling all of this together on your spring break, no doubt, and all of the work that you've put into this and all of the exceptional professionalism that you all have demonstrated. So congratulations to you guys. And originally I was supposed to come to Central Washington University to give a talk in person last year, but of course we all know what happened to that. COVID hit and that didn't happen. So I'm glad to be here with you today. So what I'm going to do, I don't have a very traditional academic talk. I have more a collection of stories that I'm going to tell you. And then I'm going to offer you some advice that you didn't ask for. And I'm going to describe the work that I am doing now. So the first thing I want to do, I'm going to ask you to you're all at your computers, and it's nice to see so many faces. Thank you for having cameras on. It's really difficult for those of you that teach. It's really difficult to speak to black boxes or just to text. So it's nice to see so many faces. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is to get either a pen and paper or to open a text editor, since you're all on a computer, and I'd like you to write down two things. The first thing is, what is my purpose in life? And the second thing is, what is my purpose in life with respect to primates? And so my presumption is that most people here are pursuing careers related to primates. Many of the people here are graduate students. There's probably also undergraduate students, but the majority of people have some kind of connection to primates. And given that this is likely the only hour many of us will ever spend together in our lives, I want to make it meaningful. So I'm going to try to pose a big picture question. We'll come back to this later, and I'll tell you what I think mine are. Okay, so I'm going to tell you some stories this morning, as I said, and these are going to be from my experiences. as an academic, as a graduate student, as a researcher, as someone who has done work in another country. And I'm going to describe the path that I took. And for much of this, I'm going to sort of juxtapose the best and the worst, either scenarios or situations or stories that I have to tell you about those. Okay, so the path to where I am, and the juxtaposition here is successes, and the other side is the failures. And failure has kind of a bad connotation. We can also think of this as struggles along the way if you prefer, but I think failure is okay too. So don't get put off by this. I'm not trying to be braggadocious. I just want to note that I have a number of advanced degrees. I'm gainfully employed, and NPR once called me a lemur expert. So I feel like I'm set, like I'm good. I'm pretty good from here. So these are the things that have gone pretty well. But along the way, things don't seem like that. And since many of you are early in your career, you're embarking on some of the journeys that I have been through, I wanted to describe some of my struggles along the way or failures to you. Okay, so the first is college calculus. Did anybody have a good experience with college calculus? You can raise your hand if you did. See, I don't see any hands. So I failed college calculus, and that was tough. That's hard on the ego to get an F in something. It makes you feel like your whole world is over. But I needed to move forward, so I enrolled again, and I took college calculus a second time. And can anyone guess what happened that second time? You don't actually have to guess. I'm being rhetorical. I failed again. And I did worse the second time. So the first time it was like 46% where 50 was a pass. And the second time was like 36% where 50 was still a pass. And the second time I also had a tutor. So I got worse at calculus, even though I tried harder and put more work into it the second time. So I enrolled a third time, and luckily the story ends there. I passed. I think I got a C+, which was like my proudest C+ ever. So that was one thing that I failed at a number of times. My first trip to Madagascar, it wasn't a failure, but it wasn't great. It was my first trip outside of North America, and I was planning to be gone for 5 months, and I left 10 days after getting married. So all of the stress and all of the things that go along with that. I went to Madagascar, and once I got to the field site where I was planning to do research for a number of months, it turned out that the animals there were being hunted. And so it wasn't either feasible or ethical to habituate the animals and to study them, because if you get them used to your presence and there's hunting going on, they're just going to be hunted. So that's not possible. So that wasn't a great trip. It did turn out okay. I got some data and was able to move forward. A couple of other things, nearly dying twice. So that happened too when I was a graduate student. The first was I have a heart condition called Inappropriate Sinus Tachycardia. And I didn't know about this until I was so stressed out that my body could not manage. And so what happened was my heart would be racing, even though I wasn't doing anything. So I could be sitting at my desk, but I'm like out of breath, like I'm jogging, because my heart is just pumping so fast and not getting blood anywhere. So there was that. I didn't almost die. I'm exaggerating, but I felt like I was going to. And the second time, I had dengue fever in the field, and I really kind of almost died that time. And I can remember thinking, because when I'm in the field, I'm in a tent. I can remember thinking one time in the night, like, I don't think I'm going to make it out of here. Like, I do not think I'm going to survive this trip, and I don't really care. Like, I was just somewhat delirious and dehydrated, and I just didn't care. So that is, that's a warning sign. You're not in a good place. So yes, I almost died 2 times. Then I took a postdoc in Europe, which was lovely. I went to Vienna. It's a beautiful city. I really enjoyed being in Austria. But my husband was in California, so we had to be apart again. And it was really actually kind of terrible because I'm in this beautiful city with all of these wonderful things to do. And mostly I just walked around and cried. So that was not ideal. And then just some of the other things that I'm sure that many of you are familiar with, all of these grant applications, job applications, manuscripts, all of these things that are rejected, dozens of grant applications, I'm sure, job applications, well over 100 jobs I've applied for, and most you don't even hear anything back. Manuscripts rejected, it happens all the time. A couple of years ago, I had 2 manuscripts rejected in the same day. So that's a bad day. And so what's the point of all of this, all of my failures or all of my struggles? Here's the first bit of advice that you didn't ask for. Just be willing to fail, because if you're going down this path of being an academic and or being somebody who works in conservation, it's really hard and things don't go really smoothly. So you have to understand that this is part of it. And I think it's also important for us to sort of normalize this, that things don't go perfectly all the time, even though that might be what we think of other people, or that might be the journey that we have in our heads for ourselves. I would also recommend trying to be realistic about your abilities, your time, and your desires. So sometimes the things we think we want that sound like a good idea, like a postdoc in Vienna sounds wonderful, but it's actually not what you really want. When if I was being honest, I wanted to be at home. I wanted to be with my husband and my pets more than I wanted to be elsewhere. Also, knowing that quitting is an option. So quitting sounds really bad. It has, this negative connotation, and we think of quitting as really bad. But the thing is that, goal of the day, or we need to figure out what our goal is at the end of the day, because for me, when I told you that, that night in my tent where I thought I was going to die, to me, it was just, that was just what was going to happen, because I couldn't possibly quit. I couldn't possibly go home early. I couldn't possibly leave and not continue to do the study that I set out to do. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why I actually could have. I just didn't realize that. I didn't make that an option in my own head, even though it would have been much healthier for me then, and probably in the long run. A few other things: branch out. So sometimes you try things and they work out really well. Sometimes you try them and they don't. Make friends, which I'm not always great at, because I like to go to bed at like around 7, and other people don't seem to. So it's hard to make friends when you're sleeping. And just to be nice. I think it's always a good idea to be nice, because this is a fairly small world and you never really know who you're going to run into or who is going to be part of your long-term journey eventually. And then to ask for help. So there's nothing wrong with asking for help, especially when you are a student or an early career person. That's why mentors are there, and people that have more experience, more information, they can help you. Okay, so I've got some best and worst stories from the field. So this is a picture of the ring-tailed lemurs that I study. They're getting a drink of water inside this cave here. So things about the field that I love. I love to be in the forest with the animals. I just do. I love it. Especially when I'm alone. I really like to go out into the forest all by myself, but I know that this isn't really safe, so I don't tend to do this. But at least like once a field trip, I definitely spend an afternoon alone, just because it's just such a pleasure and a privilege to be out there with the animals. You just get to see all of their own little dramas, all of, every little bit of their world is what you get to see. And it's really lovely. And especially when you're alone, and then, there aren't noises from other people, and you could just, it's just lovely. This picture here, this is close to one of the sleeping sites of one of the lemur groups that I study. I like to call this the salad bowl. It's this kind of dippy spot in the forest where they come down and they have little snacks before they go to bed. And it's really lovely when the sun is going down, if the mosquitoes aren't too bad. Just the light gets really pink, and the animals are kind of being nicer to each other at the end of the day, and kind of like making little noises and grooming, and it's just really, it's lovely. So yes, I love the animals. I love being with them. This picture is a lemur ball. So ringtail lemurs particularly hate to be cold. And so it was probably about 25 degrees Celsius here. So it's like, I don't know, around 80, I think, 80 Fahrenheit. And so they still don't like that's too cold for them. So they're in a lemur ball. But the funny thing about this photo is that this is a female lemur ball. And I'm sure all of you know that lemurs are female dominant, and they run the show. So this was a male, and he was trying to sneak into this female lemur ball. And the whole thing lasted about 3 seconds, and they just would have nothing to do with him joining their lemur ball because he's a boy. So he needed to get out of there. But I just caught him with his face, like he was just going to sneak in there just for a little cuddle, like maybe nobody will notice. But they definitely did. And another story that I like to tell was from, I don't have a picture of it, but it was a young female. She was about 3 months. So a ring-tailed lemur female, she's just a little muffin of a thing. And she was sitting next to a full-grown adult male, and she gave him a boop, like a little boop on the nose. And he recoiled in horror and did like submissive cackles and ran away and was just like, oh my God, it was the worst thing that ever happened to him. And I don't think that he was actually afraid of her or he was hurt or anything. I think he was probably afraid that her mom might think he was bothering her and like retaliate. But it was so remarkable to me how interesting and different lemurs are in terms of this female dominance and how a little tiny female infant, the power that a little female infant has over a fully grown adult male. It's so unusual and so interesting. Okay, some more of the good stories from the field. Just being out in the forest, I really love this. For those of you that have had this type of experience where you can spend a lot of time outdoors, I mean, it doesn't have to be in Madagascar, it can be anywhere, it can be in your own backyard if you have one. I just really love to be out there exploring. You never know what you're gonna find. You never know what you're gonna see. Some of it's really good, some is not very good, and it's kind of scary. And you get to wear really weird things when trying to keep bugs off you. So that's also fun. Okay, so these are all of the good things, the good stories from the field, and now I'll tell you more about some of the not so good things, the things that I don't like as much. So I hate traveling. Like I really dislike traveling. I don't like being in a car. I don't like being in a plane. I don't like being in an airport. I don't like being on a boat. I don't like it. I don't like moving places. I don't like it. And so doing a lot of travel, I've been to Madagascar 13 times. Doing a lot of travel like this is not pleasant for me. I don't like it. And I also can't sleep on a plane. Like I can't sleep if I'm sitting up. And so it takes roughly 40 hours to get from California to Madagascar. And so that, in addition to leaving home, which is really hard for me, I have like almost an emotional breakdown every time I have to leave because I get really distraught. It feels to me like grief. Like I feel when I'm leaving and when I'm gone, I feel like I'm grieving. It's really, I really struggle when I leave home. So all of that, not sleeping, feeling really miserable, but just not being, not generally enjoying. I know some people that are like, yay, we're on a plane, it's so fun. No, not me. So I don't really like traveling, so that makes it not so fun. It also takes, from the time I leave my house in California to the time I get to the field site in Madagascar, it's about 2 weeks. So it's a long time. It's a long haul to get all the way down there. So I don't like traveling, and this was the worst story ever. This was in 2011, and I was going I had to do a run from the forest where I work to the closest main city, and it's about a 10 to 12 hour drive. So we had to go get food, like every 2 months, we had to go stock up and get food. And a cyclone was coming, and we were scheduled to beat the cyclone, but something happened to the brakes in the car, and so we got delayed. And then we got stuck right in the middle of a cyclone. So we literally were in our car, and the rain was mental, and we drove into a lake, and that was it. We just were in the middle of a lake, and we kind of had to wait for it to the cyclone to pass and the water to drain before we could sort of do anything. So it went from a 10 to 12-hour drive to a 5-day trip. And I had had dengue fever before that, so I was not well. And some of my camp manager was also with us, and she was really sick, so she was vomiting outside of the car. And so on one night, this is the Malagasy golden frog, and it comes out, so they go dormant in the ground. They can stay dormant for several years, and they wake up when there's rains. So you can see in this picture here that the water has almost all gone, but the first night when we drove into the lake, the water was nearly to, it was to the handles. So if we got out of the car, it was past your waist. So you have to get out of the car to go to the bathroom. And so we were completely submerged in water, and you just have to kind of like swim through and try to manage. But these frogs had emerged. So over the night, these frogs, they started shrieking, like they go mental, they scream, and because they've been dormant for several years and it's time to mate. And so I can just remember getting out of the car, like trying to get through the mud, trying to like kicking all these, I can't help it, kicking all these frogs out of the way that they're going mental and they're all trying to mate. And then by the morning, there was a foam of like frog reproductive stuff that was like it was huge on top of the water. And yeah, so this took 5 days, and it ended. We weren't able to get anybody else to drive into the cyclone because that's not a good idea, right? You're not going to be able to rescue us. We probably just need to wait it out. Eventually, it ended with getting a cow car or a charrette to the forest. But I distinctly remember this because I wasn't really not feeling well, and the cows had really bad diarrhea. So they're trotting through like this water, but the diarrhea was like aerial. So it's just like I'm sitting right behind here. It's just spraying. So by the time we get to the forest, it's just like, yeah. So that was the worst. And the thing that I think about that is that it's never going to be that bad again. Like that can't happen to a person twice. It can only get better, right? Like I've never had that situation since. I probably won't again. I hope that you don't. But it can be bad. I'm going the wrong way. Okay. And so for those of you that don't have field experience, it's a very interesting sort of phenomena because, as I've said, I really love being out there and it can be really wonderful. But you're also really isolated. So as I said, it's like a 10 to 12-hour drive for me to the actual field site, to the closest nearest town. And when I go, I get dropped off. So I don't have a car to get out until the car is coming to get me. And you get all of these really strange things that happen to you. Like this was I'm sorry to show this gross picture of my feet. This was in 2019, the last time I was in Madagascar. And I don't know why, but the ends of my toes peeled off. Like my toenails and the ends of my toes, they just peeled off. It didn't hurt. It was, I don't know why that happened. But I just get like lots of health issues and problems, and it's really worrisome when you're out in the middle of nowhere and like you don't know if you're dying or if you're not dying. Especially when you care if you're dying or not dying, it can be really not that fun. There are things like this neurotoxic centipede. These guys, they have pincers on both the head and the anal end, so they will bite into you, and you can't get them out unless you cut them in half and then remove them. And they're I don't know, like maybe 12 inches long or maybe 8. They're big. And there can be a lot of things. Like one year there was a lot of spiders. I'm not a super cool arachna person. I wish I was, but I'm not. And other things like there's no electricity. You just have to wash your clothes by hand, and your clothes are very dirty. There's no toilets. There's no showers. There's nothing comfortable. There's just animals. So you really have to be into those animals to deal with all these sorts of things. Okay, and so I'm going to switch I'm still going to tell you stories, but I'm going to switch to thinking more about conservation. And for most of us, or for many of us, or I should just speak for myself. For me, I got into, I've always loved animals. I'm an animal person. I was putting these pictures together, realizing that like maybe this wasn't consensual, these poor little beasts, but I hope that they weren't too distraught. But my whole life, I'm drawn to animals. This was a bicycle rodeo. I think I was about 8, and you can see my dog as part of that. The poor thing, he's wearing like, I don't know, streamers or something. And I think I crimped his hair too. So animals are important to me. They're really part of my journey. I tend to be quite empathetic, and especially with animals. So yes, so this is moving into conservation and animals, and I lost my train of thought a little bit, but how I got to conservation, because I wasn't particularly interested in conservation. I was interested in lemurs and evolution and female dominance. I didn't go and intend to be somebody who worked in conservation. But a couple of things, well, a number of things happened that sort of changed my view on this. And a couple of them were these two individuals here. So the first one, this guy, his name was Sid, excuse me. And he had been a pet, a wild captured pet ring-tailed lemur in a village close to maybe 20 kilometers from the field site where I was. And one day, a guy from the village and a park ranger and Sid, the lemur, arrived on motorbike, and they just left Sid. The owner was afraid that the people in the village were going to kill him, kill the lemur, not the person, because he got into trouble. He was now 4 years old, which means he's sexually mature, and he would get into people's houses, and he would like get into food and knock things over, and so people didn't like him being part of the village. And he had already had 2 fingers amputated as like a way to punish him for perceived bad behavior. So they didn't really know what to do with this lemur, and they just brought him and dropped him off. And I didn't have any way to contain him or to do any, I mean, what am I going to do? I don't know what to do with this lemur. But he stayed with me for a couple of days, and I have one memory of him in particular. I was trying to feed him garlic because he had a lot of fleas. He had like really bad fleas. And so the only thing I knew to do was to try to feed him garlic. But in the night, he was really rambunctious and really like, he was dangerous, and it was very worrisome. But at night, he was very nice. He was very calm, and he was in my tent. And I woke up at one point in the night, and he was licking my nose and using his little tooth comb to groom my face, and he had garlic breath. So he was very sweet, but he escaped. I had no way to keep him contained, and almost certainly he would have died within a few days, because he didn't know how to find food. He didn't recognize foods. He wouldn't have known how to find water, and I was never able to find him. So I couldn't help him. I couldn't save him, and I'll always feel not bad, but I'll always, that will always bring me sadness. And the second one, this little guy here, his name is Mowgli, and he was a pet at the town next to where I work, and somebody contacted me about him. And the reason that this is problematic for me is because he was taken from the groups of animals that I habituated. So I habituated these animals in 2010 for when I was doing my doctoral research. And because of that, people knew that the animals were habituated. And so poachers would go to these groups to take the babies because you can get up close and you can just easily grab them. And so that hasn't happened to my knowledge since 2015, but it might still. And it's an important thing to consider if you're ever in the position where you might be habituating animals, or where something like this might happen. And yeah, it's just one of the other things that got me into thinking about conservation and the sort of the bigger picture. Okay, so around this time or later in time, over the last several years, I've just been sort of reflecting on the things that I've been able to see in Madagascar and some of the, my position within all of this. And so things that I was seeing, is forest destruction, the forest going away, the pet trade, and also this really crippling poverty in particularly in southwestern Madagascar. And so the year that I did my dissertation work, it cost me roughly 60,000 US dollars. So that was like transportation, that was paying for permits, that was camping fees, that was feeding everybody, everything included. But less than 5 kilometers from me, there were children that were suffering really severe malnutrition. Like there were children that were dying. And I didn't really know that at the time, or I didn't think of that at the time, but just thinking about how is it that I am spending all of this money, like immense amounts of money, to be able to, follow lemurs around and do interesting things. And then there's people like literally right beside me that don't have food, and that like how is this possible? How, like, this isn't fair. This doesn't make sense. I don't know how to deal with that. And what can I do? What should I do? Are some of the things I started thinking. And so somewhere along the way, I had a fairly major revelation that conservation is about humans. And that may not sound very major. I think like everyone else got the memo, but like I didn't get the memo on that. I just, I got into studying lemurs and following lemurs because I love animals and because I want to know more about animals, not because I wanted to work with people or work in conservation. But at the end of the day, if you want to have animals to study, you're going to have to work towards protecting them. And part of that is working with people. So in the area that I work in, the thing that primarily needs to be addressed is the really extreme poverty. And if we want to preserve the natural habitat, this is what needs to be addressed. And conservation is really hard. It's like soul sucking because you're never going to be able to do enough. You're never going to, it's always going to get worse. So, over the next 20 or 30 years that I'm going to be working in this field, it's only going to get worse. Like I don't have hopes that it's going to get much better, but that's not to say that what we do isn't meaningful. And one of the things that I always try to come back to, and I try to get other people to think of when you're taking on things in conservation, is that individuals matter. So if it's one animal, that animal matters. If it's one person, that person matters. And if you can have an impact on that one individual, you're having an impact, and you're starting somewhere. So like I said, it can become really overwhelming really quickly, but everyone can make a difference in somebody else's life. Everyone can impact one animal or one person, and that's a good place to start. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about conservation and how Lemur Love, the nonprofit that I started and that I run, how we sort of pivoted in light of COVID. And so our mission is to protect lemurs, to empower women, and to further science. And what we knew when COVID happened, or what we knew fairly early on, was that this could be a total disaster for the lemurs, the specific lemurs that I work with, these groups that I've been following for over a decade. Because if you've got these people that are living right next to the protected areas and the animals that are already experiencing really severe poverty, what's going to happen if all of a sudden everything just shuts down? People will have no choice. Even if they don't want to exploit resources, what are you going to do if you have no food, if you have no fuel, if you have no money, if you have no chances of getting any of those things? Your only option is to go to the forest and get the things that you need. And so knowing this, we just thought that we needed to move really quickly and get some programs happening. And this is outside of what we had really done before, because it's a much more human focused type of conservation. But we were able to fairly successfully, I think, roll out some humanitarian aid really quickly. So this affected several thousand individuals over. Well, we still have, it's still going on, but hopefully we'll be able to end around July of this year. And so we really increased humanitarian aid. And this was really important because people didn't have in these remote villages, when there was a lockdown in Madagascar, the normal system of transportation wasn't running, so people couldn't get food. The normal system of money being exchanged with tourism is Madagascar's #1 GDP, wasn't happening. All of a sudden, there's just no tourists, so there's no money moving. So people didn't have money, they didn't have food, and they didn't have things like soap or the ability to get medicine. And so we couldn't even, with our local partners, we couldn't even move things like food or anything. So we had to, a lot of times, we had to just give money, because people would be able to buy small amounts of food, but we couldn't move large amounts of food. So we prioritized humanitarian aid. We prioritized monitoring and patrol of lemur habitats, because we wanted to be able to act quickly if there was something going on. So if all of a sudden, if really quickly we saw that, oh my God, there's something going on in Forest X, we could respond. And we wanted to keep some of the programs that we had already started going. So there's lots of very, very promising early career Malagasy scholars that we wanted to make sure that this didn't completely shut down their work as well. So these are some testimonials from some of the village people, the people that live in the villages where we work. So this was the mayor of Ifuts. He said the situation is getting worse as taxi Bruces stopped, and some villagers have to walk to Bituki to buy food, cassava, as they cannot afford rice. Lemur Love's aid is now their only hope. The situation is very terrible in Ifuts. There's been no rain since December. So that would have been December 19, there hadn't been rain. And just to give you some context, Bituki is about 100 kilometers. So people were walking to Bituk to buy cassava, which is not a preferred food, but walking 100 kilometers to get food. So things were really rough. And this is in another village where we also built a school last year. Thanks to Lemur Love, mothers are able to feed their children. And even if it's only for a short time, seeing their children have enough to eat gives them hope that maybe tomorrow will be better. And last, oh dear, no, did I go? Oh, okay, I made a mistake. I had another one, but it's okay. Anyhow, we know that these were really impactful, and we know that this helped people to be able to sustain this really difficult time. And we have the agreement that we're working together so that they don't have to exploit the forest, because that's what our bigger goal is to make sure that the forests remain, and to minimize human suffering. And then so we were also able to get funding to monitor 17 species at 4 different protected areas. So this is still going on. We have funding for a whole year for this. And last, these are the early career scholars, Malagasy scholars that are now Lemur Love Fellows, and we're currently working with these early career scholars. Some of them got cut out of here, I'm afraid, but it's been a very positive experience, and within about a month or two, we will have each of them to the point where they have a manuscript ready for submission to a peer-reviewed journal. So this will help them to further their careers as well. Okay, so let me check the time. I want to talk about some things that you can do, and from the research that I've done, given you all of that back study, a couple of areas that I think are particularly important and that you can have a meaningful impact in. So I saw this story. World Nomads is an insurance company. They specialize in travel insurance, and I often purchase their insurance when I travel, because I do all kinds of weird things that don't qualify under most types of insurance. So for example, being somewhere where there's no hospital or there's no electricity, a lot of insurance won't cover that kind of thing. So this is the one that I generally follow, or that I generally purchase. And I saw this article came up in my feed just a few days ago, and it was talking about how to not exploit animals when you're traveling. And they give this example of a place in Madagascar where the animals are rescued. And these animals, particularly this one individual, is absolutely not rescued. And I know that this facility uses not good practices when it comes to obtaining animals. So even when this can be difficult and nuanced, even to people that are trying to promote, eco experiences and ethical travel and interactions with animals. So many places will say that they are sanctuaries. Many places will say that they have rescued animals. And this facility in particular did have rescued animals about 30 years ago, but those are long gone. These are, many of their animals now are directly wild captured and transferred to this location. So many places will say they're sanctuaries. They'll tell you their animals are rescued and they will take your money, but very few actually are. And so very many of these experiences, even though it's not the narrative we're told, these experiences exist for us. They're not for the animals. The animals don't need to come into contact with humans to have rich, full lives. We want to come into contact with them in order to take photos and in order to have experiences with them. But it's not necessarily within their best interest to be doing this. And so here's what I challenge you to think of if you're going to be traveling, or if you're going to be sharing photos or videos or things about traveling, is to think about the animal's well-being, and is the animal's well-being the priority of the facility? So ways that you can tell if it is that you shouldn't be able to directly interact with the animal. You shouldn't be able to feed them. You shouldn't be able to hold them. And if the facility is not willing to have those boundaries in place, they're prioritizing the human experience over the animal's well-being. And so for me, that is nope, I'm not going to visit there. I'm not going to pay money. I'm not going to. And I encourage you to really look deeply into this, because you may be traveling with a very reputable company, a very reputable organization, even a conservation organization, and yet you might find yourself in a situation where the animals are being exploited, and you may not even realize. So you really have to do your homework first. And so the reasons that, I'm sure you understand, the reasons why it's not good to have wild captured animals at places like this. But the individual animals suffer. So the capture is often clandestine, so it's probably illegal. So the animals are captured, then they have interactions with humans, and then they likely have inappropriate diets. So all of those are not good. Also, when animals are transferred to a location, they're no longer part of the gene pool. So all of these species, well, no, all of the Shifaka or the Indriids on the screen are critically endangered. And so if these are moved to these essential islands where they're there to interact with tourists, they're no longer contributing to the gene pool, and they're critically endangered. They need to be part of that gene pool. And then we have reason to believe that they often die early, because they could have human diseases. So you can see direct mouth-to-mouth contact with Indri in these photos. I just recently had a paper come out that showed that a pet lemur died of tuberculosis, which it most likely got from a human. So it's possible to transfer diseases in this way. They also will have weakened immune systems, inappropriate diets, and stress. So Indri are all folivores, and in each of these pictures, they're eating bananas, which are really not very good for them. And I've been following photos like this on Instagram, because I'm interested in seeing the types of experiences that people go for, the ways in which people are interacting with animals. But I'm also interested, I'd like to understand the turnover rate of animals at these facilities. And so if there's any aspiring AI programmers out there, I would love to have you make some kind of software to be able to identify lemur faces. So I want to be able to tell one lemur from another lemur for different species. Anyhow, this shifaka here, this was actually the last picture of this individual, and they died after that. So it's, you know, it's this really seemingly cute. All of these are published publicly. So I'm sharing people's photos that they have put out to the world. But it's this seemingly really cute experience that this person was having feeding this shifaka bananas. But the animal was really in poor health and died within a few days of that. So all of these situations are problematic, but they're also problematic for the types of expectations other people have of how they should be able to and can interact with wildlife. So we know that when people see photos like this, it makes them think, oh, cute. Oh, I want one. Oh, I want to do that. Oh, that's a wonderful thing. You can go to Madagascar and interact with lemurs like this. Oh, that's great. But of course, that's not what we want. That's not the kind of interactions that we want to promote. Okay, so how many people have seen true facts about the tarsier? If you've seen this, give me a yes in the chat. Okay, so I think pretty much everyone has seen true facts about the tarsier. Do I need to play it? Why did I not play it? We've all seen it. It's cute. It shows all these tarsiers. They're super cute. Like, what's not to love about a tarsier? The reason I tend to play it is because I want to pick up some things on it, but I can do that by just showing you the next slide. And then we don't have to view it again. Okay, so all of these pictures I took as screenshots from the True Facts About the Tarsier video. What do you notice about these? You can, if anybody wants to comment with a real voice, or if you want to comment in the chat, that's fine too. What do you notice about all of these photos of tarsiers?
Big eyes.
Big eyes. What's the activity pattern of a tarsier? Related to that?
They're nocturnal, but here they're in the light.
You betcha. Okay, so tarsiers are a nocturnal primate. All of these photos, they are pictured in light. And if you can look really closely at their eyes, what you can see here is looks like a house and then a person's hand with a camera. What you can see here, it looks like there's some trees and then there's a bunch of people. In each of these, if you look really closely at their eyes, you can see with the reflections back and you can kind of see what's going on. So all of these guys, why are they awake in the middle of the day? Why are their eyes so big in the middle of the day? And you see they're completely pinned because their eyes are so huge and it's too bright. They're not, you know, they're nocturnal animals with these huge eyes. So that's an indication that something is going on here that is not great. And indeed, there are all of these facilities in various locations in Southeast Asia. I'm not an expert in Southeast Asian primates or their or in tarsiers specifically. So I'm not picking on any particular facility. I'm just saying that these facilities exist that are for, it's essentially like a kind of a big cage, and people go in because they want to interact with these tiny little primates, and they pay. Of course, you pay to go in to see them. These animals are wild captured, and then they live in this small facility, and they exist there to interact with humans. Humans will try to feed them like a cricket on a stick, or just try to feed them, and somebody is essentially poking them quite a lot because people want to take photos and people want to see these tarsiers awake during the day, because that's when humans are awake. They want to be able to take their pictures and interact with them. So this is not ideal. And actually, the creators of this video, I messaged them about that because I collaborated with them on a different video. And I just said, look, if you're going to be making these videos, you know, try to use ones that aren't from these places that wild capture and then exploit the animals. And then I looked a little bit more, and I found, I don't know anything about this particular sanctuary. I just know that I found some videos that show, you know, this guy here is actually touching the tarsier. The other guy has got his, you know, his camera right up in the face. And then in the same video, it showed, lo and behold, there's Prince Charles in some kind of, I don't know, governmental building holding a tarsier. So how bizarre and how inappropriate. So just to be, point being, just to be really aware of the ways in which you spend your money and the ways in which you might be inadvertently supporting activities like this that harm individual animals and also harm conservation action. And most of you are probably familiar with this. Best practices for responsible images of non-human primates was just published quite recently, I think this year. And so my recommendation is primates. I've tried really hard to distinguish between places that are true sanctuaries, and you may know of habitat country true sanctuaries that you really want to support, but you really have to know quite well what their practices are. So for me, I'm just going to places where the animals are wild, and I'm also not, I will encourage, or I will tell guides how I don't want them to behave before we go out, because I want that to be very clear. I'm not going to feed any animals. Please don't try to get animals to jump on me. Please don't try to catch any animals. Please don't bait them. These are the things that I don't want to engage in. I just want to go and potentially see wild animals, but I understand that sometimes that can't happen. Sometimes you go on a wonderful hike all day long and you see nothing. Well, that's, you know, that's wildlife. Those animals didn't feel like crossing your path today, so that didn't happen. I'd much rather have that than have the animals be bothered or hurt because of me. So yes, so please have a look at, I see somebody shared it, thank you, these guidelines. So be really conscious of what you pay to do, what you engage in, and what you share, and what you like and share from other people, because we don't want to propagate these ideas of the ways in which people should be able to interact with wildlife that we know are bad for wildlife. Okay, and so we're coming back full circle now. I asked you at the beginning what the purpose of your life is, what the purpose of your life is with respect to primates. And so I think I've been reflecting on this quite a bit. I think the purpose of my life is to be the squeaky wheel. So I'll often tell people things they don't want to hear. It doesn't win you a lot of friends a lot of times. And I will, you know, people get irritated. So I know, like, people get irritated with me, but I still feel that my purpose is to be the squeaky wheel. And I'm often being the squeaky wheel for those that have less power. So that can be other humans that don't have the same amount of power, or it can be animals, because animals can't speak for themselves. So, and I know too that I'm really highly empathetic, and I tend to pick up on things that other people might not pick up on. So I notice things that from other people's perspective. So I have the ability to see these things, and I'm willing to speak up based on that. And then with respect to primates, I want the groups that I study. So this is a very specific desire. The groups that I study and know, I want them to outlive me. So I want to make sure that they are there for hopefully ever, or however long that is, but that they outlive me, that those animals are still carrying on, you know, past my lifetime. And that the people that are living next to those animals suffer less. So I hope to work towards more small sustainable development programs so that both of those things can happen. Okay, so maybe you know your purpose. I asked you to write down what is your purpose and what is your purpose with primates. Maybe you know it already, but maybe you need a little bit of time to reflect on that. And you can, if you figure that out, you can @ me on Twitter. So I will look for your purposes in the next few days. I hope some of you have a purpose with respect to primates that you can articulate. And really, that's it. So thank you very much for listening to all that. And these are my collaborators who I would be nowhere without. So thank you to all of them as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manny Lafleur, for the beautiful presentation.
Thank you.
Now it's a time for question, and please do not hesitate to ask any question. If you are not able to ask it, you can type on the chat as well.
What do I think of animal encounters, interactions at US zoos? So it depends. It depends on it. I'm presuming that that this means like an AAZK or whatever. I can't think of what the actual acronym is, but I'm assuming this is like an accredited zoo that has some kind of encounters. For me, I'm not going to do it because I just don't. Yeah, yeah. So I think yeah, I'm not going to, because for me, I would much rather just observe and not, like, I just feel like I'm being a bother. Like, I feel like I'm bothering somebody. I'd rather just watch. But I don't necessarily think there's a kangaroo walkabout at the Wild Animal Park, San Diego Zoo Wild Animal Park, that I think is lovely, and I've walked through. I think we are more aware of and concerned about disease transmission than we were a year ago. So that is something to consider. And I think that it depends on the species. It depends on the situation. I'd rather not. I would personally, I'd rather not. But I can understand that not all of these are negatively impacting the animals. In fact, they could have positive effects on the animals. So yeah, that's not a great answer. But for me, I'm fine to see an animal from afar. What partnership does we? So we don't have a partnership with Planet Madagascar, but we have supported their work in the past. They do really excellent work in northwestern Madagascar. So we work way down in the southwest. They work in the northwest. So I fully recommend the work that they are doing, and know that they're doing important work. But particularly, they've done some fire interventions that have been really important. What do you think about the use of fruit in lemur diets? Well, I'm not a nutritionist, so I don't necessarily have more information than you do. But lemurs eat a fair amount of fruit in the wild, but they also get really skinny every year in the wild. So obesity is not an issue. Sugars aren't really an issue. More calories are an issue for the wild animals. So yeah. From what I know with zookeeper friends and things that I follow, it seems like fruits are best to keep limited, but yeah, I'm not a nutritionist. Can you talk a little bit about the evolution of female dominance? Yes, this is so amazing. This is the best thing on earth. So there are roughly 6,000 species of mammal. Of that, there are 113 lemurs, roughly, and 2 other species that are female dominant, the giant or the naked mole rat and the spotted hyena. So how is it possible that there's so few animals that have female dominance? Well, we know this. It's because it costs females, it's more expensive to reproduce. So females invest more in their offspring. And because of that, females have choice over males. And so males compete over females. Females then tend to choose males that have showy traits, are bigger, have weaponry, and are just sort of generally impressive. And so through sexual selection, that means that males tend to also be socially dominant. So they've got these big traits for being aggressive, for being able to fight off other males, and so they usually dominate socially. So in these other animals, that hasn't happened. And in naked mole rats and in the spotted hyenas, the females are physically bigger than the males, and so that's how they are able to maintain their dominance. But in lemurs, that doesn't happen. So they're monomorphic. The males and females are the same size, yet the females, particularly in ring-tailed lemurs, are 100% socially dominant all the time. There's no negotiation over this. And so this is just so very strange, and really why I fell in love with watching lemurs and following lemurs, because I just really wanted to understand this better. We think it is to do with that females need to be able to get access to high quality foods. And because lemur reproduction is a little bit different, the infants are born at the worst time of the year. So if you think about North American mammals, for example, you think about deer or ungulate or something, the infants are born at the best part of the year, or almost the best part. The spring, there's all this glut of food available, it's warm, it's a nice time of year. Lemurs, they're born at the worst time of the year. So it's the time when there's no food, the females are really skinny, they have they are lactating for the next several months, and then there's nothing for them to eat. So the females are literally starving. And it doesn't seem to make any sense. Why on earth would they do this? And we think that it's because the infants then are sort of being able to eat solid foods at the time that is the best time of year. The most predictable, even though it's not very predictable, the most predictable time when there's going to be food is when the young lemurs are starting to eat solid foods. So we think that if this wasn't selected for, the infants wouldn't first year, and the females wouldn't be able to get enough food because the margin of error is so low. They get so thin right before the dry season that or right before the wet season, if the wet season doesn't come, many of them die because they just can't survive. So we think that it has been selected, female dominance in lemurs has been selected for because the habitats, because of this somewhat unusual seasonality and the limited resources and unpredictable resources throughout the year. But we don't exactly know. Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm just reading with somebody who is that the Planet Madagascar is going to be doing something with bees. We've tried to do bee projects, but they don't work in the south because there aren't enough plants for the bees to pollinate. I'd like to try some of those, they're called bacon bugs, that people are starting to grow in Madagascar for food. I'd like to try that, but again, the Southwest is really hard because there's not a lot of resources to work with in the first place. So you have to, even if you have the insects that you want to grow for food, you have to have food to feed the insects to grow them, and that is often a problem. Have you ever studied bachelor groups? I've never known of exclusive bachelor groups because lemurs are multi-male, multi-female. So you'll get exclusive bachelor groups when you have a situation where there's usually, we call like a one male unit. So there'll be one dominant male and then a bunch of females in a group. And because we know that mammals are more or less born about 50-50, male to female, in those groups, there will be bachelor groups, but in ring-tailed lemurs, there doesn't tend to be. Sometimes males will emigrate between groups, and so they spend a little bit of time on their own, but they don't exist in exclusive bachelor groups for permanent amounts of time. So I haven't studied bachelor groups.
Hey, Marnie. How's your poop and urine studies going, and how is Justin Trudeau doing?
Oh, yeah, so studies are plunking along. You know, things have been difficult with COVID, and also the last couple of times that I was in Madagascar, I had to leave samples because I wasn't able to secure export permits in time, and so I'm interested to get back to be able to pick up samples, which I have lots to analyze, and Justin Trudeau, as far as I know, is fine. He was there last year. Well, he was there in 2019. I hope he's doing well. He will be 4, so he might have migrated by now. But yeah, I hope he's well. Justin Trudeau was a juvenile. Hold on. Okay, hold on. This is Justin Trudeau. when he was about 10 months old. And we called him that because I had just gone back to the field and it was Canada Day when I followed this group of lemurs and we found a new young male. And so he was our Justin Trudeau. I'm Canadian, so that's, yeah, got to represent. Are there some species of lemur in which the males have the same social standing as the female? So there are species of lemur, such as the red-bellied lemur, Lemur rubraventer, that they are much more egalitarian. So the ring-tailed lemurs are like the extreme in female dominance. There's no negotiations over this. But in other lemurs, particularly in different types of lemur, they seem to have less exaggerated female dominance, so it can vary according by species. Any more questions? I don't see any. I don't think I missed any. Do I have experience with eyes? I'd love to hear. No, I would love to have experience with eyes. I love them. They're my favorite animal. They're my favorite lemur. But if you remember, I told you I like to go to bed at 7. So I'm not one for nocturnal work. I'm not one for a rainforest. I'm not into that. So I like a dry forest. I like during the day. Those are, I know my limits, and those are them. As for fossa, no, I don't have experience with fossa either. So the area where I work, it has the lowest primary productivity of any known site in Madagascar. So it's a really difficult place for animals to survive in. And although I know there are fossa there, really, really rarely. So I started working at this field site in 2008, and I probably have about 4 years of continuous camera trap data. And out of that, I have had 3 photos of fossa. So I've had hundreds of forest cat, I've had hundreds of village dogs, like there's lots of other predators, but only 3 fossa. So they're really quite rare in this area. Do we work with accredited zoos? Yeah, so we have some zoos that support our work, and actually we hope to. I'm just strapped right now. I'm a full-time professor, and I also manage Lemur Love, so there's only so many hours in the day. But we hope to roll out a program to have more conservation partners, as I think we're going to call them, from accredited zoos. So we'd like for zoos to be able to support the work that we are doing through some kind of a partner to develop that. The Little Rock Zoo has supported us for a really long time. And lots of the Zookeepers Association that we've really are really appreciative of these groups, because they do a lot of work. Zookeepers, they hustle. I mean, they hustle for their jobs, but they also hustle for conservation, and props to them. Anything else? Doesn't seem like it. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. If there's no more, I think we can all take a break. You guys have been sitting a long time already. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much for listening. And if anything else comes up, please feel free to contact me. Happy to chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Manny
Thank you.
Lafleur. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We can join the next meeting at 11:30 with the Lemur Center. Thank you.